Hello, class. I'll be presenting to you the photo essay that I put together. It's about aging with HIV, and in particular, the various health issues and concerns that may come up with a clientele that is infected with HIV and has gotten older. Um, Previously, an infection, becoming HIV positive, was a death sentence, but thanks to like modern medicine developments and so forth, um, it's gotten to the point where people are living into their 60s and 70s who've been infected since maybe 1984 or the early 90s, whatever it is. So there's a lot that's like unknown still. If that makes any sense. So I chose to focus on this population due to my internship, which is at Equitas Health, which it's an Ohio statewide agency that serves people who live below the poverty line and are also HIV positive. So within that population, it's a very diverse swath of people. I've worked with a number of clients from all different backgrounds, all different ages. So there we go. But like I said, that population piqued my interest to do this project on because it's like so immediately relevant to me. So I'll lead us off with a little bit of background information about the disease. Um, the first like confirmed uh, person to die of HIV in America was um, a flight attendant named Gaetan Dugas. He was French Canadian, so I could have just butchered that pronunciation pretty bad. But he was an airline attendant, so he was able to fly all over the country and at one point claimed to have had over 500 sexual partners. And he quickly died in the early days, passed away at 31. So the early medications, the type of medication that is given for HIV is a antiretroviral drug, right? Because HIV itself, you know, it's a virus and it is a retrovirus, so antiretroviral. There was a cocktail of them because that's how it works. You need multiple pills to help combat the infection. But it was known as HAART. That's HAART. And it's been the most effective since. So what it does is it controls and manages different areas of one's body and also counteracts different parts of the virus too. So it essentially pauses the viral cells from duplicating and allows your white blood cells to flourish and replenish. So in the midst of all that, after, the outbreak was somewhat originally controlled, there was a teenager named Ryan White who passed away sometime in the late 80s. He was infected through a blood transfusion, and he was basically the first poster boy, like the first everyday person face that could be put to HIV and AIDS, because previously there had been Magic Johnson and there had been Freddie Mercury and among other people. So Ryan White passed away at a very early age. He made a ton of TV appearances, lots of handshaking with politicians and so forth. And now his name is on the legislature that allows funding for medical coverage, treatment, and research into the virus. So now I'd like to talk about transmission for a hot minute. Most commonly, it's transmitted through sexual encounters. The most risky, or the most high-risk method for transmitting is receiving anal sex, but it can be transmitted through any sort of either vaginal or anal sexual encounter. Also, blood transfusions, intravenous drug use when you share a needle. Those are also the other two most common ways to transmit. Less commonly, though, is a mother who's infected, passing it on to an unborn child, or being stuck with a dirty needle. Essentially, it's very critical for people with HIV to manage the disease and keep on top of the disease. It's actually a felonious assault in Ohio if you have sexual intercourse with someone who is HIV positive and they do not tell you. That can land them a rather hefty fine and several years of prison time. Some common symptoms include Kaposi's sarcoma. I'll just flip this around so you can see it. Yep. Let's see. So that's basically a herpes virus that affects your entire body as opposed to genitalia or oral. Another common early symptom is thrush that comes in your throat. It'll be a very mucosal lining, very sore throat, and so forth. So the modern meds, moving on, they're still in the cocktail form, but they're in a much more manageable cocktail form. People don't have to take so many gigantic pills. They don't have to take so many pills in general anymore. So, and it's also been possible to merge several pills into one unit. So it's more convenient than it ever has been to manage. Another thing that can happen is drug resistance, which can occur when a client misses medication or, they just skip doses or they stop taking it for some time. The virus basically mutates and devolves into a form that is uncontrollable by the previous medication cocktail. So one of the things, and this is where I get into the elder health, is inflammation. So when you're infected with HIV, your body is in a constant state of inflammation because it's trying to fight off this foreign virus inside you. So that can put massive stress upon all your bodily functions, because your body is basically in battle the infection mode 100% of the time. And this is what the medications help to suppress. I'd also like to talk real quick about notable deceased celebrities. There's many. I picked out a few relevant to me. Eazy from the rap group NWA, Freddie Mercury from the band Queen, science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, and French philosopher Michel Foucault. They were all infected at various points through various means, and it really doesn't matter, whether you're gay, black, white, straight, European, American, extremely educated, minimally educated. The virus really does not discriminate. It really could affect anyone. So one of the easiest ways to avoid transmitting is through safer sex, and that's critical for anyone who's infected. Anyone who's infected and plans on seeking out sexual encounters. Most easiest ways, condoms, using condoms, both male and female, performing acts with lower risk of transmission, and also using the PrEP drugs, which stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Essentially, you take these, it's like a blocker, essentially. It blocks the virus from working within your system. Hepatitis is another common side effect, causes jaundicing of the eye, damages your liver, but thankfully there's been a drug developed called Harvoni, which essentially cures hepatitis C, although hepatitis A and B are also big risks. So when you age with HIV, and now I'm getting to the good stuff, there tend to be issues such as isolation or comorbidity, because the HIV infection opens your body up to opportunistic infections, because your body's constantly fighting off the HIV. It can't focus on fighting off other things that may pop up. Interestingly enough, osteoporosis is one of the most common afflictions that go with aging and HIV. Another thing that could come across is survivorship guilt, especially with when you work with people who are survivors of the initial outbreak. They could have been any number of their peer group, family group, romantic partner group who were infected, but for some reason they didn't succumb to the disease and they didn't pass on. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. Some general health concerns, it's just important for older adults of either HIV positive status or not to stay in control and in charge of their health, especially just due to the constant inflammation caused by the HIV infection. Another thing that can happen is a form of dementia caused by when HIV becomes AIDS. It opens your brain up to an early onset form of dementia. There's a lot of stigmas that go with HIV, especially for men who have sex with men, or sex workers, or intravenous drug users. Because there's already the stigma there, a person who's not any of those and is infected might feel even more stigmatized and othered than they previously would have. It's important to minimize stigmas when you work with anybody of any age within this population, but especially the older generation. One of the things that is truly effective is helping a person who's infected build up a positive mental mindset, know everything they can about the disease, and just help them build their attitude towards life and living and continuing on. Equitas Health is the agency I work for. Like I mentioned earlier, it serves people who live with HIV and live below the poverty level. In my experience, it's been very effective. It's been an effective resource for anybody who comes to use the services. The future, medications have only improved, and I can only see the rate of new infections going down. All right. Thanks for watching. That was my quick little presentation.